everyone, I'm Jess, and I'm the content manager here at Course Report, which is a resource to help you choose the best bootcamp for you. You can use the Course Report website to research the best coding bootcamps all over the world. Plus, we share Q&As with alumni, folks who have actually gone to bootcamps and then gotten jobs after graduating, and video with instructors just like this one. So much of the quality of a bootcamp comes from the instructors that are teaching and mentoring you every day. So today I'm speaking with General Assembly instructor Terry Rice, who teaches with the Digital Marketing Bootcamp, as well as hosts so many good informative classes on business development and career development. So Terry, thanks so much for taking the time today to speak with us. You have so much experience in tech, and I've got a lot of questions for you about your teaching style and how to actually get a job in tech right now. But let's start with what inspired you to get into the digital marketing and business development fields. So how did you get started in marketing and business consulting?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, first of all. But so I went to school for marketing. I have an MBA with a background in marketing as well as consulting. But my first job in New York, I had like zero budget whatsoever. And my VP came to me, he's like, hey, there's this new thing called search engine optimization. And if you write the right stuff on your website, you'll show up when people Google it. This is like back in 2006, I believe.
Yeah.
So that's how I got started, realizing I could still reach people on digital channels just by having the right content. And then from there, I wanted to amplify the reach a bit. So I learned how to do Google Ads. So really just starting with search out of necessity.
Mm-hmm. And you've been working in marketing and business development for like a decade now. So like what motivated you from just doing the consulting and marketing side of things to then teaching?
So on my end, I worked in-house corporate for about 10 years. I worked at Adobe, I worked at Facebook, I worked at some other agencies here in New York. But I got that 10-year itch like a lot of people do. And I decided I want to do consulting externally. And I knew that as, a solopreneur, it can be lonely and you need to have a community. So I knew General Assembly was a place I could go to where, yes, I could share what I knew with a larger audience. But outside of that, I would have more or less a home base where I'd meet other professionals and continue ascending in my knowledge of digital marketing and other disciplines that I was teaching.
And then I'd love to know like what got you excited to work at General Assembly in particular, because there's just so many boot camps now. So like what stands out to you about General Assembly?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's so well respected here in New York. And even when I worked at Facebook, I was taking some classes at General Assembly, like one-off workshops. So I already knew what the atmosphere was like. And once I went solo, I was like, how can I be there more often as part of the team? So that's what made me want to deal with just the conversations you even just have like in the elevator are amazing. Someone might be talking about some new app they're developing, and you're like leaning in like, oh, it sounds kind of cool. Or you'll hear someone talking about their SEO homework. But it was just a culture that just inspired creativity, as well as people just collaborating with each other, and that's what made me want to be a part of it.
And how would you describe your own personal teaching style, just in general?
It's very much a reflection of what I'm doing right now. So, I mean, I share parts of my day sometimes. I'm like, okay, right before we started talking, here's what I did. And I think people can appreciate that because, yes, I have curriculum, prepared and everything based on the outcomes they want to get, but they like hearing those like in the trenches stories. And I love sharing real examples like, look, here's an email I got just right now, or I'll show my phone, like, here's what's going on. So it's just me saying, this is what a day in the life looks like. I'll give you the bones, how you get there, but this is actually what it's like when you're in those trenches. And I think people will just appreciate it because sometimes people are more clinical the way they teach. It's like, oh, you do this, then you do that, then you do this. And I'm like, I did that and it was horrible, so I had to do this instead. So it's like people appreciate that, that more real approach to, what you're talking about.
Yeah, I love that. And especially like in this moment now where everyone is remote learning, education, people are at home with children a lot. So have you had to change your teaching style at General Assembly to just sort of make it fit for this moment right now?
Not really. I was actually part of the first wave of instructors to start teaching 1 week classes online back in 2017. maybe 2016. So luckily we got formal training. It wasn't like a hurry up, we got to figure this out. It was more like, let's do this by demand. So yeah, I've been teaching primarily remotely for the last 4 years. I would say the biggest difference is having the kids in the background yelling. But the good thing about GA is there is a dedicated program to teach people how to instruct online, because it's different. I mean, even like if little things happen with your computer, if you don't look concerned, people feel like, okay, you're still in control, and you have to be even more engaging because it's easy for people to get distracted. So it's on you to control the amount of energy in the room by just continually bringing that level up. And that's something I enjoy doing.
And nowadays, since you've been at General Assembly for a while now, like which courses and boot camps are you teaching, and what does the curricula cover for those?
Yeah, I'm primarily teaching people how to launch consulting or coaching businesses.
Okay.
And reason being, that's much closer to what I'm aligned with these days. I used to previously consult companies like Walmart, Bonobos, Warby Parker, and that was great. But now I think the way I want my legacy to be defined is how I helped other people, not how I helped organizations. So I'd rather work with a solopreneur and help them make another $50,000 a year than some huge company and make them up another like $5 million a year. So that's what I'm doing. And with the consulting class, my goal is to demystify the process, because especially right now, there's a lot of people who have a lot of knowledge to share, but they don't know how to position, package, and price it in order to reach their, the desired audience and get paid for what they're really worth. So I always say, it's challenging, but it doesn't have to be confusing. So I'll walk through how to position yourself, how to market yourself, how to communicate on a sales call, and then finally how to actually deliver the value that you promised, so you can continue growing your business through referrals, through testimonials, and you can spend more time working in your zone of genius, which is whatever you're consulting on, and less time doing biz dev and marketing and stuff like that.
I love that term, zone of genius. I'm going to reflect on that for myself as well. I'd love to know what kinds of projects these students are working on too.
Yeah, well, as part of the class, you have to come up with your positioning statement, which is more or less how you express yourself to the world. So let's say you're a nonprofit email marketing expert. You would say, I help nonprofits leverage email to increase donations and retention of their community members. So you have to make it very clear what you do, who you do it for, and the outcome. That's part of it. But also just developing your marketing machine, right? So what kind of pillar content marketing pieces are you going to put out? How are you going to even interact with people on LinkedIn or other social channels? How will you position yourself as an expert, so all of a sudden you're on podcasts, panels, conferences, and you're talking to a large audience of people that are in your target audience? They see you, and then they just reach out to you later saying, I'd love to talk to you about this, love to talk to you about that, so on and so forth. So I help people set up their passive marketing streams. Therefore, again, people are coming to them asking for help as opposed to them doing cold calling. So that's part of the outcome as well.
Cool. And I know that you have some experience teaching the Digital Marketing Bootcamp. So since you went to college for business and you also do some teaching at NYU for their digital marketing classes, I'd love to know what makes General Assembly's Digital Marketing Bootcamp different than going to a 4-year college program.
I would say the main benefit is you can be extremely focused on what you want to learn. So, if you go to college, there's all these prereqs, and some of them might be interesting, some of them might not. But you can condense the amount of time it takes you to get to the outcome you want by saying, no, I only want to learn about search engine optimization. Or maybe you want to learn everything about digital marketing, but you don't want to learn about Psych 101 and stuff like that. Yeah. So especially for people who are maybe adult learners and, they're like, look, I need to make this change a bit quicker. I think it's a great option because you can accelerate your career growth by taking one of these more hyper-focused classes.
And one of the appeals of a boot camp is that it can be super iterative and adapt to the needs of the students and what they need right now. So I'd love to know, because digital marketing and business development are just ever evolving fields, how has the curriculum at General Assembly developed over time or evolved over time?
By design, it had to, just because like
Yeah.
you're like, hey, push this button, it does this, and like that button moved, right? So that's the benefit of having practitioners teach the courses, because they're in these tools so often.
Mm.
They're going to know, oh, okay, I have to update my deck, and there's a refresh, I believe, on a yearly basis as it is.
Mm.
But you're dealing with people who are doing this stuff on a regular basis, so it's always just up to date in what you're being presented with. Outside of that, just also looking at the trends.
Yeah.
So right now we're saying, oh, let's take a look at TikTok, but then Instagram just came out with Reels, which is a very similar product to TikTok.
Yeah.
Any practitioner would know, hey, if we're talking about Instagram next week, I got to talk about Reels. I'm not just gonna wait for that question to come up. But you're working with people who are proactively bringing this information to you because it's part of their daily life, as opposed to responding to some of the questions that you might have.
That's awesome. And since you've been at General Assembly for nearly 5 years now, like, are you finding that there's a certain type of student who does really well there?
Yeah, I would say anyone who's curious, gritty, and has a vision for why they're there will be more successful, because you have to have a vision, because it's going to be challenging. But if you're like, here's the reward on the other side, and you're curious to learn more about this discipline, all right, and you're gritty, you can just push through these challenging times, you'll come out successful on the other side, because you have teams of people that are there to support you, but you have to put the work in on your end as well.
I would love to know your biggest boot camp student success story, if you can share one with us.
Yeah, one that comes to mind is this woman, Lindsay Howell. She's a pilot, but she realized only 6% of pilots are women, and she seeks to change that. So what she's doing is she started a consulting business where she goes to flight schools and teaches them how to attract and retain more female pilots.
Cool.
Which to me is amazing. But the way that she learned how to do this, it's something I teach in my class, just doing audience research. She reached out to 50 female pilots to interview them, and she reverse engineered their success, saying, why did you end up, being one of those few women that pushes through? And that's how she put her program together. But the thing is, when you do that type of research, you grow your network. Yeah. And as a result of doing those interviews, she already had 4 real leads for flight schools to work at, because these women would say, oh, go talk to my flight school. They really need help. So she was able to grow her business before she's even ready to launch, just by doing this research process that I talked about. And I just think that was amazing.
That's so cool. And I'd love to know, whether it's the Digital Marketing Bootcamp or one of your own business development courses, what is sort of the end goal for these students? And are there types of roles that your graduates are prepared to fill?
It depends, because people come in at all different levels. I've had the VP of marketing at Time magazine come to my class before. So I'm like, all right, you're doing pretty good. Yeah. I've had the CEO of Lyft in my class before, or sorry, the CMO. So I'm like, where are you trying to go from here? So it kind of yeah. I mean, the goal is to your point, upskill. But it depends where you're at, to where you can go. But I think for anyone who's more or less brand new, the benefit is you have a portfolio, an example of work that you've done, because particularly in the digital marketing course, you would go through several different channels, several different tactics, learning how to leverage these platforms. But then you would have this presentation you put together saying, here's this real company, it has to be a real company, that I worked with. Here's their situation. Here's their challenges. Here's my solution for how they can achieve their goals. Yeah. And here's the channels, tactics, and budget I would need to do that. So for me, if I'm just starting out and I have that to hand over to someone when I'm interviewing or on my LinkedIn profile, that can really put you far ahead of anyone else who doesn't necessarily have that real world experience just yet.
One of your focuses at General Assembly is career development. So I'd love to know, what are your top tips for career development, even when people are faced with an exceptionally difficult year like 2020 has been?
I would say don't rush it, because I find so many people, especially in the digital marketing world, they're like, yeah, that's what I want to do. And I'm like, have you done it before? Like, no, but it sounds cool. I'm like, well, try crunching numbers in Excel till 3 a.m. And it's not all cool posts on Instagram. So I would say be very deliberate about it, as opposed to just saying, oh, here's what I want, because you might be surprised and there's something else you want to do instead. And I'd also think long term, because right now, especially during COVID, there's so many people saying, oh, I have to get this skill so I can get this job. And there's almost, I don't want to say a desperation, but there's like this, let's call it desperation to find something.
Yeah.
And you have to realize this period, it's going to be a slice of your life, right? Let's say it lasts a year, but you shouldn't have that impact the trajectory of the rest of your life and your career. So still be very deliberate about what you want to do and think, 2, 3, 4, 5 years in the future, not just what can I do right now to get me a job during COVID. So that would be my advice.
Those are great points. You are also a big proponent of mental health in the workplace. So what advice are you giving your own students these days about getting a job during COVID-19 and just like staying mentally healthy?
I think it's important to realize that there's a lot of people looking for jobs right now, right? So if you apply for a job and you don't get it, it's not a reflection on you. So it shouldn't necessarily impact your self-worth. It's just like the situation. So you have to practice what are called epic thoughts, where you remind yourself of difficult things you've accomplished in the past. So you graduated from high school, you got some promotion, you did really well on a project, and you have to really front load these thoughts to remind yourself in those moments that, hey, no, I am valuable, and I will be successful. Just right now, it's like I have to push through this challenging time, because otherwise the situation can impact your self-worth, which again, that's going to be a downward spiral for your career. So that's part of it. And then the other is just more or less like the way you perceive things and the action you take. So, okay, I got rejected from this job, or they won't reach out to me. What's the next most positive thing I can do now? Go apply for some more jobs, right? Or spruce up your LinkedIn. But you have such a finite amount of energy. The more energy you spend like feeling sorry for yourself or just feeling down, the less you have to do something proactive, which will lead to this goal that you'd like to achieve.
Yeah, I love that. I think people can burn out so easily. So those sound like really good tips for just figuring out how to like regenerate that energy for yourself. You're also super involved in lots of organizations outside of General Assembly. So I'd love to know, like, what are your like top resources or like online meetups that you're recommending for complete beginners who want to like kickstart either in digital marketing or some kind of business development capacity?
Yeah, I mean, I would say on the digital marketing side, just look at the industry leaders. So like Neil Patel, somebody like that, and just see what they're doing, because they'll give you all these tips, all this advice at no cost, and that'll guide you very well. But I don't think it's just that. It's spending time, not just trying to do something all the time, not just trying to learn all the time, but trying to apply it.
Yeah.
Because one of my favorite quotes by Jim Rome is, knowledge uninvested in labor is wasted. So if you learn something new, try to find a way to apply it to see if you actually like it. Maybe volunteer at a nonprofit to do some ads for them or some kind of digital marketing. So that would be my advice. I mean, I'm also a contributor to Entrepreneur Magazine, so I would say read that. It's pretty good.
Love it.
So, get some pretty good tips there if you want to check that out.
Yeah.
But it's not just knowing where to go. It's how do you actually apply the knowledge? Because I see some people just like stockpiling information. And I'm like, okay, well, what are you going to do with that now? Like, are you narrowing in more on where you want to focus? Or are you still just attending, a bunch of webinars, reading a bunch of blogs and stuff like that? So as you learn more, you should start honing in more on what feels right to you.
Yeah, that totally makes sense, because if you're just like taking in all of the resources, even if you're like reading through them or watching the videos or whatever it is, it just kind of stays surface level and it doesn't like get deep where it becomes like an actual tool in your toolbox that you can use. So totally. And at this moment in time, like, what is your advice for those who are just like looking to get into digital marketing because they're wondering if this is like a career path that's recession proof? Like, do you have any words for those people?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it definitely is recession proof, but if you're trying to get involved with it, you have to present yourself as someone who's a student of digital marketing. So on LinkedIn, are you regularly sharing articles saying, oh, this article was great, they talked about the best ways to tag your website? Or are you interacting with people who are, again, leading the charge in digital marketing when they post? Are you saying, oh, thanks so much for sharing this, so on and so forth? I always think to myself, if there's an opportunity that I want and there's someone just as qualified, what would I have to do to separate myself from that person, and then I do it. So that's why I was saying you need that curiosity and that grit, because if you Google best ways to get a job, you'll see a bunch of stuff come up, right?
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah.
that. But if you're like, okay, now what else can I do? So maybe you're reaching out to 30 people a day who are already working in your industry and saying, hey, I'd love to just talk to you for a moment about this. Or I noticed you did this. I just wanted to say this is amazing. Are you forming a network, or are you just shooting off resumes saying something's got to stick eventually? I think the more proactive and strategic you can be, the better.
And kind of along those lines, like, I think people want to build their networks and like want to reach out to these other people on LinkedIn, but they just get kind of clammed up. Like, what do I say in that message? Do you have any like words of advice for like how to like make that first contact and like kind of make that leap into connecting with people on LinkedIn?
Yeah, I mean, the best way to do it is either ask a question or a compliment, or give a compliment. So you can give them a compliment saying, oh, I see you recently did this. I have a question. While you're going through this, did this occur?
Yeah.
So questions and compliments are good. Just make it clear you've done some research on that person. Don't just say like, hey, I see your marketing. I would love to connect. That's boring, right? And it doesn't show that you care about them. It just cares like that you're trying to go about growing your network. So you're better off spending a couple hours researching 10 people you want to reach out to and doing it thoughtfully. But before you reach out to them, maybe look at some of their posts, engage with it to show that you actually are following them. And then from there, you can do that outreach.
And my last question for you is about freelancers, because I know you've been doing some classes for freelancers. So I'd love to know, like, what's your top tip right now for freelancers who are looking to not only like survive, but actually thrive in an unpredictable economy like the one we're seeing right now?
Yeah, the best way to grow yourself as a freelancer is to align with organizations that already have access to your target audience. So let's pretend, again, you're a digital marketing consultant. You could create some kind of presentation like 5 ways small businesses can leverage Instagram to grow, and then reach out to the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce and say, I'd love to deliver this webinar to your audience. Here's the key takeaways. What do you say? So if they say yes, you now have access to hundreds of people, maybe thousands, who are all listening to you for the next half hour, 60 minutes. And then at the end, you're going to say, hey, if you want to get a copy of the slides, go to my website, or I have this really good guide on my website too. You can download it there. Just find an excuse for them to go to your website afterwards. And then you've already done everything you need to do to make that initial content and actually prove your value. So I would spend more time trying to align with organizations and less time trying to reach out to individuals.
Well, that's a perfect place to wrap up this Q&A. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today, Terry. We will be posting a recording and a transcript of this video interview on the Course Report blog with contact information for General Assembly in case you're interested in applying for one of their upcoming digital marketing cohorts or any of their business development classes. And thank you so much to all of you for watching. Tweet at us, email us, let us know which topic you'd like us to cover next on the Course Report blog. And in the meantime, please follow Course Report on Facebook and Twitter. And if you're a bootcamp alumni, don't forget to post a review of your coding bootcamp experience on Course Report. Your review is a huge help to anyone who's thinking of getting into tech today.